This was Twizzler, my gargoyle gecko's enclosure, over 500 days ago. And in this video, I'm going to show you everything that happened in the last 500 days with this reptile enclosure. Yo, what's going on, guys? All right, we are back home. We have the animals.
I've become a plant parent.
This is an 18 by 18 by 24 inch tall reptile enclosure. Now, this enclosure build consisted of building a custom background with cork bark, spray foam, and 3D printed parts. Now let's get to the biggest part of this background, the spray foam. Now the spray foam I used is gray spray foam or pond spray foam. Now you do not need to spend the sheer amount of money I spent on the spray foam for the pond spray foam. It's about 3 times more expensive just to buy the pond spray foam. But I will say get this type of spray foam because it comes out the same color as the pond spray foam but is significantly cheaper. It is harder to find, but you don't have to worry about having a white spray foam on a background that should be naturalistic and more of the grays and brown tones, so you get nothing peeking in. I did struggle with that on other bioactive enclosure builds, so just keep that in mind. Unlike other spray foam enclosures I've done, I did not add any silicone on top of the spray foam after I sprayed it down to adhere the coconut fiber to the actual spray foam. This is what a lot of people do. A lot of people do it when they spray it down and then they put the coconut fiber as fast on top as they can. And I did do it, and it works okay. Now you do have to do this insanely quickly. So in some parts of this enclosure, there are weak points in the spray foam to coconut fiber adherence. Now, like a lot of people, I don't have the money to just constantly dump into more cork bark, so that's why there are many large pieces in this enclosure that don't have cork bark and are just spray foam. Now moving off the backdrop and into the actual hardscape of the enclosure. In this old video, I used mainly cork bark and one big stick hanging out on the side of the enclosure. Now, did that work for a long time? Yes. But to me, it was not very visually appealing and left a lot of open space for my gargoyle gecko that she can't actually use unless I add more hardscape. Right now, there are 3 coconut logs that allow her to hide and use that space a little bit better than just what I had in the original. Now, I also have a lot of grapevine in all of my enclosures, but especially this one that allows her to use this environment without having dedicated ways up and around. She can use her environment to however she feels fit. Now, this enclosure was the first enclosure that I was able to use my 3D printer with. The use of my 3D printer was very minimal and only used as the planters in the back of the enclosure. Now, these 3D prints were an alternative to what normal people use, which is their normal, really cheap Home Depot planters, or they just form it around a cup that they use and just pull it out and just use the spray foam. Now, I will say it does work. When I 3D printed these, I did not have as much experience with my 3D printer, so first of all, I did not print them in solid black. I printed them in blue and gray, and unfortunately, that shows up really well in a naturalistic environment. Even though I did paint them, there are still pieces that have either chipped off from the 500 days of being around, or I didn't paint at all, where I thought it wouldn't show up, but it does. So if you want to use 3D printed parts, make sure they're printed in black, gray, or brown, just so they don't show up. Now with these 3D printed planters, well, we move on to the actual plants. Besides the one pothos in the corner that was moved from a different planter, it's almost unrecognizable. Well, 500 days ago, I had 4 different plants, 2 different types of pothos, moss, and some other one I can't tell. It's right there, I'm looking at it. Well, fun fact, all of those plants are dead except the bright green pothos. Now, I did have other pothos that I ended up using as a substitute in the bottom. It is also a great way to propagate them very quickly because they grow so quickly, so rapidly. I've been able to transplant those into other enclosures and hopefully just continue to produce more and more pothos. Because pothos are really cool. They're also really easy to keep alive. Well, with plants comes lighting. I used the 34 watt 22.5 inch high output LED Arcadia bulb, which is also the Jungle Dawn variety. Now I do use this Jungle Dawn over 2 2 enclosures, so it doesn't have as much light as it would if it was just over the single enclosure. But that was also another problem, that I did not give my plants enough light and they ended up dying. So if you want to be a bioactive enclosure like this enclosure, be sure to buy the good LED bulbs. Now, in terms of bioactive setup, I keep springtails and isopods. The isopods that I keep in here are powder blues, and besides doing cleans of the food where Twizzler, my gargoyle gecko, loves to spread her food everywhere, there has been really no cleaning for me because the isopods and springtails take care of it so well. Now that was my enclosure 500 days ago, and this is what it looks like now. With that being said, a lot of the plants are dead, so in a future video I will be replanting all of my gargoyle gecko enclosures because most of them I have either pulled the plants out so I can keep them in more controlled environment so it doesn't end up dying and I just have to rebuy the same plant over again. So there are a few plants that I have just sitting here waiting and growing, but there will be a video coming up soon of replanting this entire stack of 4 enclosures. With that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon members that help every day with what I'm doing here. They get a weekly video called Patreon Weekly that talks about everything behind the scenes that is going on with All Around Reptiles. With that being said, if you want to see long-term updates more than just 500 days, subscribe.